morning, boys and girls. I'm Miss Lydia from the Boston Library. Thank you so much for joining me for story time today. Today we are out enjoying the garden, so I wanted to read one of my favorite poems. This is called My Garden. My garden has a flower called Daisy, and another flower called Maisie, one called Rose, and one called Amy, rows and rows of flowers called Jamie, two called Pansy in a bed, one called Nancy, and one called Fred, Ivy, George, Yvonne, and Lily, Marigold, who's rather silly, Soppy Poppy, Iris, Alice, Princess Bluebell in her palace, Peter, Henry, Mark, and Giles. People come from miles and miles to see them dancing in a ring, while all the birds of heaven sing. Continuing on with our theme of fairies from our craft on Friday, I wanted to show you a beautiful pop-up book called How to Find Flower Fairies. And this goes through all of the different places where we can look for fairy houses and fairies. In the treetops. Careful observation has led me to believe that treetops are favored places for fairies to make their homes, and I have discovered that the oak is a particularly popular location. The mighty oak lives for hundreds of years and has provided a safe home for many generations of tree fairies. Indeed, its leafy foliage makes it an excellent shelter for a fairy home. Fairy houses are cleverly concealed, and you have to look very carefully for them. Do you see our fairy house inside? On the forest floor. Some fairies prefer the security of being on the ground, and it is here at the foot of the ancient oak that I have discovered another favorite dwelling place, the forest floor. Fairies require their homes to be cleverly concealed. A hollow in an old oak stump can be transformed into the perfect abode. Now we need to look for those hidden entrances, and fairy steps can be crafted from twigs. Do you see those steps going up the side? A tiny lamp lights the way, and if you look really carefully, you can see the trail of fairy dust leading into the house. In the garden. Flower beds are a perfumed paradise for fairies that desire beauty above all else. Every flower has its own fairy to care for it, which explains why most of my own fairy encounters have taken place in the garden. Flower fairies wear outfits fashioned from fallen petals. By dressing to impersonate the flowers that are all around them, the fairies may flutter by unseen. So you have to look very carefully for them. Do you see any fairies in this? They're a little hard to spot, but if you look right over here, there's an orange fairy. Up here we have a purple one. And if you look underneath, there's a few more over here. On summer days, some fairies hang their washing out to dry on webs of friendly spiders. Look out for glistening petals hanging from the webs. By the wayside. The hedgerows commonly situated along the road are very safe places for fairies to live. Their thick, dense greenery contains a wealth of hidey holes and secret places. Many countryside hedgerows are hundreds of years old and contain large established communities of fairies, but as always, they will do their very best to hide from you. So again, we have to look for those concealed entrances. How many fairies do you see in this picture? When you are passing along the wayside, see if you can spot a large number of butterflies fluttering around. Hedgerow fairies often fly amongst the butterflies. They provide an excellent means of concealment while traveling. And can you see any remnants of nutshells or berries on the ground? These are signs that fairy feast has recently taken place there. And the marshland. Past expeditions have led to my discovery that the misty world of the marshland is the most revered location in the fairy kingdom. Fairies that live here wish to be as close as possible to their king and queen. Few humans venture into the marshland, and should you visit, great care must be taken here. But the rewards may be ample, especially if you are lucky enough to happen upon the fairy monarch in the marsh. Do you see them under there? And if we look over here, it says, perhaps the fairies use large leaves as fairy boats. And that's the end of our book. So you'll have to go out and see if you can spot any places where the fairies might be hiding, and see if you can find any butterflies too. Thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed our stories. We'll be back next Monday with some more.